The hospital hallways smelled of antiseptic, a stark contrast to the warmth radiating from Nurse Emily's heart. She had worked long shifts before, but tonight felt different. The emergency room buzzed with the usual chaos. Doctors rushing between patients, the steady beeping of monitors, and the hushed cries of worried families. But amidst the whirlwind, one child caught her attention. A frail little boy, no older than 6, sat shivering on the hospital bed, his tiny hands clutching his mother's. His dark, tired eyes scanned the room, filled with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. His mother, a woman in her 30s, looked just as weary. Her clothes were simple, worn, and her hands trembled as she stroked her son's forehead. Emily had seen this before. Families struggling to afford treatment, parents desperate to save their children, but unable to pay the mounting medical bills. The mother's voice was soft, almost pleading. "Please, nurse. He's been sick for days. He has trouble breathing, and his fever won't go away. I don't have much money, but I'll do anything. Just help him." Emily's heart clenched. She checked the boy's vitals. His fever was dangerously high, and his breathing sounded labored. He needed immediate treatment, or things could take a turn for the worse. "I'll speak to the doctor," Emily assured her. "We'll do everything we can." The mother nodded, but Emily could see the hesitation in her eyes. She knew what was coming. As soon as the doctor examined the child and prescribed the necessary treatment, the question of cost would arise, and Emily could already guess the answer. The mother couldn't afford it. She walked over to the front desk, her mind racing. The hospital followed strict policies. Without payment, there was only so much they could do. But how could she just walk away? This wasn't just another patient. This was a child, an innocent life, hanging in the balance. She turned back to see the mother rummaging through her bag, pulling out a few crumpled bills and some coins. The total barely covered a fraction of what the treatment would cost. The look on the mother's face said it all. Hopelessness. Emily took a deep breath and made a decision. She reached into her own pocket and pulled out her wallet. The money she had wasn't much, just her savings for the month, but at this moment, nothing else mattered. "I'll cover it," she said softly, handing the payment to the receptionist. The mother gasped. "No, I can't let you do that," she whispered, shaking her head. Emily smiled gently. "Let me help. Your son needs this." Tears welled up in the mother's eyes as she gripped Emily's hands tightly. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." Emily only nodded, quickly returning to the child's bedside. The doctor arrived, and with the payment settled, the boy was given the necessary medication. Relief flooded the mother's face as she watched her son rest easier, his breathing slowly stabilizing. But what Emily didn't realize was that someone had been watching. Across the room, a man in an expensive suit sat silently, observing the exchange. He had come to the hospital for a routine checkup, but now he was utterly captivated by what he had just witnessed. This nurse, a woman who likely wasn't earning much, had just sacrificed her own money for a stranger's child. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just pure kindness. A slow smile spread across his face as an idea formed in his mind. He stood up, buttoning his suit jacket, and walked toward Emily. She was still checking on the boy, adjusting the IV line with gentle hands. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice deep yet warm. Emily turned, startled. She immediately noticed his polished shoes, the designer watch on his wrist. He didn't belong in this part of the hospital, not in the emergency ward where people struggled to make ends meet. "Yes, can I help you?" she asked. The man studied her for a moment before speaking. "I couldn't help but notice what you did just now, paying for that child's treatment." Emily's cheeks flushed slightly. Oh, that. It was nothing. He needed help. That's exactly why it's not nothing, the man replied. There aren't many people who would do what you just did. Emily glanced back at the sleeping boy, a soft smile on her lips. I couldn't just stand by. The man nodded, as if confirming something to himself. Then, he extended his hand. My name is James Carter. Emily hesitated before shaking it. His grip was firm, confident. Emily Parker. Well, Emily, James said, a twinkle in his eye. I think we need to talk. I have a proposition for you. Emily blinked in confusion. A proposition? James simply smiled. Let's just say, I'd like to make sure your kindness doesn't go unrewarded. And with that, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, handing it to her. Emily looked down at it, her heart pounding. What exactly was he offering? And why did she have a feeling that this one moment, this one act of kindness, was about to change her life forever? Emily stared at the business card in her hand, her fingers tracing over the raised letters. James Carter. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. The card itself was sleek, expensive looking, with nothing but his name, a phone number, and an address printed on it. No company name, no title, just an invitation, of sorts. She looked up to ask him more, but he was already walking away, his confident strides carrying him out of the hospital doors, as if he had done exactly what he came to do. Emily felt a strange mix of emotions, curiosity, excitement, and a hint of unease. Who was this man, and why was he interested in her? It wasn't every day that a stranger watched an act of kindness and then made a mysterious offer. But before she could think about it too much, a soft voice pulled her back to the present. Miss. She turned to see the boy's mother still, sitting by the hospital bed, watching her with grateful eyes. Thank you again. I don't know what we would have done without you. Emily smiled. You don't have to thank me. I'm just glad he's getting better. The mother hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small bracelet, handmade, with tiny beads strung together. She held it out with both hands. I make these to sell at the market. It's not much, but I want you to have it. Emily's heart swelled. She took the bracelet gently, running her fingers over the delicate beads. It's beautiful. Thank you. The moment reminded her why she had chosen this job in the first place. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about climbing some career ladder. It was about people, about making a difference, even in the smallest ways. But then, her eyes drifted back to the business card. James Carter. What exactly did he want from her? That question lingered in her mind for days. She searched his name online and quickly realized why it sounded familiar. James Carter wasn't just some wealthy businessman. He was one of the richest men in the city. Real estate, tech startups, philanthropy. His name was tied to all of it. Emily hesitated before dialing the number on the card. A man like him had no reason to be interested in a simple nurse, and yet, her fingers hovered over the call button, curiosity gnawing at her. Finally, she pressed it. A smooth voice answered almost immediately. James Carter. Emily cleared her throat. Hi. This is Emily Parker. We met at the hospital a few nights ago. A pause. Then, Emily, I was hoping you'd call. Her grip tightened on the phone. You said you had a proposition for me. What exactly did you mean? James chuckled. Why don't we meet and talk about it? Tomorrow, 7 p.m., the Belmont Hotel rooftop. Emily's breath hitched. The Belmont was one of the most exclusive hotels in the city. Just stepping inside would be out of place for her, let alone meeting someone like James Carter there. She hesitated. It's just a conversation, Emily, James said, as if sensing her doubts. "I promise, nothing more." Against her better judgment, she agreed. The next evening, Emily found herself stepping out of a taxi in front of the Belmont. The doorman eyed her simple dress before nodding politely and opening the door. The rooftop restaurant was breathtaking, glass, walls overlooking the glittering city skyline, soft jazz playing in the background, and tables lit by candlelight. James was already there, sitting at a private corner table, watching her as she approached. "You came," he said with a smile. Emily sat down, trying not to feel completely out of place. "I figured I should at least hear what you have to say." James nodded, then leaned forward slightly. "I won't waste your time. I saw what you did at the hospital, and I think the world needs more people like you." Emily frowned. "I was just doing my job." "No," James said firmly. "You went beyond that. You gave your own money, with no expectation of anything in return. That kind of kindness, it's rare." She didn't know what to say to that. James continued, "I run a foundation. We help people, families who can't afford medical care, children who need treatment, but money alone isn't enough. We need people like you, people who genuinely care." Emily's heart pounded. "What are you saying?" "I want you to be part of it. Work with us. Help us change lives." The offer stunned her. She had spent years in the hospital, watching patients struggle, knowing she could only do so much. And now, here was this man, offering her a chance to do more. But there was something about James, something she couldn't quite figure out. "What's in it for you?" she asked carefully. James studied her, then smiled. "You're smart. I like that." He leaned back. "Let's just say, I know what it's like to need help and have no one to turn to. This is my way of giving back." His words felt honest, but Emily sensed there was more to the story. Still, the idea of making a bigger impact called to her. "I need to think about it," she finally said. James nodded. "Take your time, but something tells me you already know your answer." Emily left that night feeling like her world had just shifted. But what she didn't know was that saying yes wouldn't just change her career. It would change everything. Because James Carter had secrets. And by stepping into his world, Emily was about to uncover truths that would shake her to the core. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this was all too good to be true. A job that allowed her to help more people, backed by one of the richest men in the city. It felt like a dream, but something about James Carter still didn't sit right with her. Over the next few days, she tried to go about her normal routine at the hospital, but the idea kept nagging at her. So, after much thought, she decided to take the offer. If nothing else, she owed it to herself to see where this path could lead. James was pleased when she told him. He wasted no time introducing her to his world. Fancy charity galas, meetings with top doctors, and visits to private clinics funded by his foundation. At first, Emily was amazed by how many lives they were helping. Children receiving treatments their families couldn't afford, patients getting second chances. It was everything she had ever wanted to be a part of. But then, she started noticing things, small details that didn't add up. One evening, she stayed late at the foundation's office. Going over patient records, she came across a list of donations, and one name caught her attention: Michael Carter. The amount next to it was large, almost suspiciously so. Her stomach tightened. Carter. Could it be a coincidence? She dug deeper, pulling up old records. The same name appeared multiple times, along with other large, unexplained transactions. The deeper she went, the more uneasy she felt. The next day, she confronted James. "Who is Michael Carter?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. James's expression changed instantly. The usual warmth in his eyes was gone, replaced by something unreadable. "Where did you hear that name?" he asked, his tone calm but sharp. Emily held up the papers. "It's in the Foundation's records. Large amounts of money being moved. Around under his name. Who is he?" For a long moment, James just stared at her. Then, with a heavy sigh, he sat down. "Michael Carter was my younger brother," he admitted. "He was sick for most of his life. Our family spent everything trying to save him. But it was never enough. He died when he was 10. Emily's heart ached at the story. But something still didn't make sense. Then why is his name still showing up? Why is money being moved? Under someone who's—" She hesitated. "Not here anymore." James ran a hand through his hair, looking conflicted. "Because," he said finally, "I made a mistake. A long time ago, I promised myself I would never let another child suffer the way my brother did. I built this foundation to help people, but not all the money comes from honest places." Emily felt her breath catch. "What do you mean?" James met her eyes. "Some of our funding doesn't exactly come from clean sources. Investors with deep pockets, people who want to donate in exchange for certain favors. I never wanted it to be this way. But when you're trying to save lives, you sometimes have to make choices." Emily's mind raced. The foundation was helping people. There was no doubt about that. But if the money wasn't clean, if the people funding it had hidden agendas, then was she really making a difference the right way? She felt sick. She had left the hospital to help more people, to do something bigger. But now she was caught in something she wasn't sure she could stand behind. James leaned forward. "I didn't bring you here to deceive you, Emily. I brought you here because you, Caddy, I know this isn't easy, but think about the kids we've saved, the families we've helped. Does it really matter where the money comes from, if it's being used for good?" Emily swallowed hard. She wanted to believe that. She really did. But deep down, she knew the truth. It did matter. She stood up. "I can't do this, James." His jaw tightened. "Emily, no," she said firmly. "You're doing good things, but if it takes bending the rules, looking the other way, I can't be part of that." James exhaled slowly, then nodded. "I respect that." And just like that, Emily walked away. It wasn't easy. She left behind the resources, the big opportunities, and the promise of making a difference on a larger scale. But she couldn't trade her principles for it. She returned to the hospital, back to long hours, tired feet, and heartbreaking cases. But she also returned to real moments, the raw human moments that made her job worth it. The mother squeezing her hand in gratitude. The child smiling after. A long battle with illness. The quiet victories no one else saw. One evening, as she was leaving her shift, she found a small envelope in her locker. No name, no return address. Inside was a note. "I understand now, and I'll do better. Thank you." And beneath it, a check, large enough to cover treatment for dozens of patients. Emily smiled to herself. Maybe James Carter wasn't beyond saving either.